uh, see what we do. Okay. Hello. I think we are live. Yes, indeed. Okay. All right. So, welcome back, everybody. I'm Chaz. This is my channel, Bookish Chaz. If this is your first time watching, welcome. I am joined by longtime friends and cohorts of mine, Peter and Karl from Geek on My Sleeve. I will leave links to their channel down in the description below. If you have not checked out their channel, you absolutely need to. Phenomenal content creators, especially if you have played heavily in the lit RPG space. If lit RPG is your thing, you like reading those types of books. Karl and Pete are one of the few content creators that I know of that focus heavily on lit RPGs. So you're really missing out if you are looking for some content around there. So I'm so happy to have them here. And I've kind of already talked about them already, but I'd like to give Peter and Karl a chance to talk a little bit about themselves and their channel, and then we'll get into the subject for today.
Yeah, appreciate that intro. You want to go first, Pete?
Either way, I was gonna say that's a pretty good synopsis. Booktubers, and yes, if I had it my way, we would play more and more in the lit RPG space, or it's also considered video game lit. Or if you've seen sword art online, the idea is getting trapped in the video game or technology advancing where you can essentially lay down and interact with it. But yeah, we recently have been doing more like full deep dives of books like we're doing here today. We can't quite keep up that pace like Chaz does. He's all over the board between book reviews and uh, what to read and series and yeah.
We aspire to be on his publishing schedule. I think Chaz, you're doing what, like 2 to 3 a week?
Yeah, two a week, and sometimes 3 if it's a live stream. Yeah.
Um, yeah, really excited. This setup, this format that we're doing here with Chaz is very similar to what we try to do at least once a week. We wish we could get content out as often as Chaz does, but if we do anything, it's on Sunday, currently doing 8 p.m. Eastern time slot. We like to just get together, hang out with good people like Chaz, talk about a book and or series, go down the rabbit hole, just completely just geeking out, having fun. And then Pete also has been doing a couple geek tech tip videos as well. So if you have anything that you would like Pete to break down in that realm, that's something else we've kind of been doing on our channel outside of books. Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah.
You had a bit.
Yeah, I just enjoy breaking things or figuring out how to make it work.
Yeah, I've gotten quite a bit out of a few in particular, especially of Pete's videos on tech. So definitely check those out. And there's some great minute quotes. Been getting into the YouTube Shorts realm with the quotes. I like that stuff too. Good times.
Yeah,
we're suckers for a good quoot.
Yeah.
Dennis E. Taylor, the author of the Bobiverse, has a handful as well. Yeah, and also some good pop culture references that I'm sure Chaz really appreciated.
Oh man, yeah, I eat it up. It's good.
Yeah,
And that's actually a good segue. That's what we're here to talk about today. If you have never read the Bobiverse series, I do want to give a warning that this is a completely spoiler-filled stream. So But if you are a Bob veteran or you don't care about spoilers, love for you to hang out with us and watch the video. So, or comment live if you're with us today. So, but Bobiverse, I was mentioning to Karl because he was telling me how glad they were to be invited back for this, and I was telling him, well, you guys are the whole reason that I started reading Bob, and that is literally the truth. I started the Bobiverse solely on the recommendation of these two fine gentlemen. So, yeah, much appreciated. It's been a fun ride. I will say though, I think I like the first three books better than book four. Book four was still really good,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't quite as good as the initial three.
You can almost tell based off of his time spent in between publication, because like 1 and 2 were pretty close, and then he had a bit of time off before 3, and then he had a longer grace period before 4. And yeah, it's almost like a additional arc.
Yes.
It's a good addition, but yeah, different vibes.
I was about to say the same thing. It's like the first 3 is a good standalone trilogy where you're like, oh great, it's the classic Bobiverse, and then this is like the second season where it's still all the people you know and love, but kind of adding some new elements and taking on some new challenges, um, and yeah, yeah, and in a lot of ways, Dennis E. Taylor is probably one of the authors that I guess I've read up more on than some of the other ones, and I feel like this one we kind of got to see a little bit more of his personality come through in some. The one that comes to mind, I stalk him on Reddit, and he's part of the subreddit. I'll probably butcher it, but like birds aren't real. And
Oh,
then in this book, what did we learn about some of the birds? Right? They
Yeah,
were the spy drones that were, doing the searches and everything. So I thought that was kind of a fun little geeky nod of his to one of the subreddits he likes to troll, and then other good pop culture references of Star Trek, Star Wars, so on and so forth. But anyway, kind of going off the beaten path there. But
no,
yeah.
it all plays in, right? Because
Yeah.
that is the big thing. A good author really does let their personality and their interests and all that shine through into their writing, I think. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that says a lot, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, and gosh, like so there were a couple times when I was going back and listening through again, where it was kind of hard to keep track of everything. Like I was excited when this book first came out, like, oh, we'll finally figure out like what happened to Bender.
Mm-hmm.
But just how much the Bobiverse has expanded at this point. Like
Oh, I know.
we know that we're 200 plus years since original Bob, but we're
Mm-hmm.
also at least mid 20s as far as generations go,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I
And I
think,
think that just kind of goes back to book 1 through 3. It was more focused around saving humanity and protecting ourselves from the
the
others, where this
others,
one, it was more focused on Bender and, Bob 1 and him.
Mm-hmm.
And we were kind of like viewing all the other stuff from like outside observers kind of
Yeah,
deal. Just
and
different
it was
vibe.
pretty exploration heavy too.
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
With this one. So
That's true. Like as far as them being von Neumann probes and just being matrices and ships, we spent most of it around Heaven's River and the Moots, right?
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much pretty much all it was.
Yeah.
And one thing that I thought was really interesting that he played with, and I'm drawing a blank on what exactly he called it now, but the slippage or divergence from impersonality and
Or replicative drift.
replicative drift.
Yes.
Thank you.
They called
Yes.
it something else. Oh, quantum effects or like whatever 1 through 3. It had a different verbiage, but yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting how heavily this focused on the replicative drift, because I mean the entire first quarter of the book, I would say, was
Mm-hmm.
very heavily focused on infighting among the Bobs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
you've got Starfleet, which is just crazy nuts.
Right.
You've got
Skippies.
the Skippies, yeah, which were
Mm-hmm.
kind of, they want to be on their own and do their own thing, but they also like aren't quite as radical as Starfleet.
Right. They lean more towards basically humanity's holding them back, right? Because
Right.
the Bobs are able to perceive time at whatever limitations their hardware have. So by forcing yourself to operate in meat space, you're limited to the 1x, right? Where
Right.
when they interact just on their own, there was a moment when Bob was trying to contact Bill. Granted, this is across like, multiple universes or whatever, and he was saying that it took seconds to get a response, and that just goes to show how crazy busy they are, not milliseconds. They're used to like
Oh.
having full conversations in milliseconds. So the
Right.
Skippies kind of view like, why limit ourselves, and they kind of lean more that way.
Plus,
Where like,
they're going for the artificial intelligence, and that's
right.
where like this had a big pull. But real quick, we had the gamers, which I wanted more D&D campaigns, and then we had the
Yeah, that
board,
was cool.
which was I'm trying to remember where that's a reference from.
Borg is Star Trek, but they weren't part
Okay.
of Starfleet, I don't believe.
Yeah, it was more just cosmetic.
Mm-hmm. And then they even implied at one point with the replicant drift that there was a Billy or whatnot, implying that a Bobby, that maybe Bob was identifying as a female. That wasn't quite a faction.
I caught that too, Carl.
Yeah. And I think those were like the big factions. Yeah, the gamers, Skippy, Star Trek or Starfleet, and then the senior Bobs, which we all know and love.
Which are like their old men with their stamp collections because they're kind of getting in their ruts or finding a hobby.
We had some pushback on that in book 3 too, because of all not wanting to have rules. One of the few rules they did have were the senior Bob in the local area was in charge, and everybody was supposed to defer to them.
But we got to see that falling out pretty quick. Like I felt even in book 1 when we created Bender and I can't remember who all we had. It was the one guy, a bunch of. He pretty much, as soon as book 1, Bob's cohort, when he created them, they were doing the Pav, or not Pav, the. It's been a minute. Deltons, thank you, the Deltons. And he was pretty much like, well, as soon as I get a ship, I'm leaving. And like there was we could see it coming, and that was more of a, I guess, initial rule, but is not how they operate, so to speak.
Yeah.
So before we get too far into the other subjects, I kind of wanted to touch a little bit more on the replicant drift and get your guys' take on it, because I think they attributed some of it to just like when they make the copies and the clones, like there are some, quantum mechanics that kind of like have some different variables. But I remember when we were talking about this Peter, when we were doing the streams last year, just about how like so much of who we are as like individuals is based off our experience and everything. So
couple side steps real quick. So book 1 had the environmental 1, 2, and 3 had the environmental pressure of save humanity, don't get destroyed by the others. And then this one we kind of had more spacing out and different things. And then we had the Starfleet, compression, and then we've got Bridget and
Howard,
yeah. And they've got their thing that they're interested in, but then so it's all like it's separate. It's not 1, 2, and 3 was having a common enemy or something to fight over brings us together. 4 was very much like whatever we're interested in we can pursue, so that's the environmental pressure. But in addition or sidestep, this book had the whole Skippy transporting and how Bridget had similar idea of if you go send your, backup to another
Matrix,
and then you delete the original, or even if you have the parent and the child and you bring one up, then you bring the other, they could swap. Or then you get the coding relation between where whoever the coders were couldn't have 2 of the same object, so they had to make a new one, a new state.
They had some good fun theories there that I really enjoyed Dennis breaking down. But kind of along those same lines, when you have all these different generations with different experiences, I think they're going to diverge naturally, even if you don't have the additional quantum mechanic differences, right? Because you're talking even subjectively at the speeds they're moving. If in meat space we're 200 plus years, and they can 10, 20, 100x time wise, you're talking some of these Bobs, even the Skippies, who don't operate in normal meat space, could be literally thousands of years old subjectively. So, as much as there's still that Bob, he died in his early 30s. And then you have multiple clones out. And then, they talk about with Star Trek having some PTSD in their ancestry and then just like branching from that. Of course, they're going to be different. But
yeah, and even though they're all essentially copies of the same person, all of their experiences are different in some ways. They've been at different parts of the galaxy, they've seen different things, and so that's going to play into it. It even and this may not mean anything, but it reminded me a lot of the drastic difference between Data and Lore. They're both creations of the same mad genius, but yet Lore was this sadistic, just deviant, awful android, and Data was the good guy, so to speak.
Or
Star Trek reference, Pete.
Okay.
Even though he had the potential to be just as evil as Lore and vice versa, it's just their experiences led them on 2 different
environments paths. And then even with the Bobs too, they're all originally programmers, but they've kind of had their own passion projects, their own hobbies that they've kind of had their experiences built around it, right? Like look at
the
Riker
situations
situations
they find themselves in, like you're saying with Riker for the terraforming, or Howard for the Mannies and piloting different forms and
Right.
Yeah.
And then again, even with Howard, him and Bridget have literally adopted all these children, orphans and whatnot. So of course, like for them, their experiences are going to be completely different than the Skippies who
Oh
have
yeah.
little to no interaction. And we kind of got to see, part of it was, who was it? Hugh was our Skippy representative.
Yes.
Like part of it was him just he had alternative motives going on, and Bob was
Yes.
picking up on that. But I think part of it also was his like antisocial tendencies that Bob originally had, because they didn't have to interact with ephemerals.
Right.
Like his antisocial tendencies just kind of amplified to where even when interacting with other Bobs, it seemed kind of like forced or artificial. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, and it was also interesting on the Howard and Bridget front, because they are, because they have their family and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked how it went down the path with Bridget of, do I actually finally replicate to make things easier, or do I just, keep the original me? Because, if she were to replicate, it's going to affect the kids, it's going to
Mm-hmm.
affect,
Mm-hmm.
she's going to have other Bobs going out with her,
or yeah, be
wanting
the
to
all
date her.
wife. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, where do we draw the line? And so
Right. And that's one thing that he's done very well. Like that was a subtle like other influence or other opinion. But then it also tied in very well with Skippy and his philosophy between transporting or whatnot and not being a new one and or Hugh and keeping his name and everything. And she had similar lines of thought.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
yeah.
It also helps with the narrative of why there aren't that many more replicants. Like we're finally seeing that there are some, but it's not a mad rush. Like we saw that in the earlier books, very few people wanted to replicate, because they pretty much didn't want to be, slaves in the afterlife, constantly taking care of humanity.
Right.
We get to see that there's some of that.
And they
But
also didn't want to be alone.
mm-hmm,
Well,
Yeah.
mm-hmm,
so sidestep, similar point. We got to see Soul or humanity basically make themselves extinct, and they had no other option other than von Neumann probes. We got to
mm-hmm.
see the Quinlans, where they essentially were about to destroy themselves, and they achieved higher AI intelligence, which
Yeah,
led
that was
to
cool.
differing events. And then we
Mhm.
got to see the others where no man left behind because we are going to destroy ourselves. We're just going to harvest
There
everybody
can only be
else.
one prime.
Yeah, so it's
Mhm.
unique to see, all the potential causalities.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's a really unique space that they're playing in. And I think, going back to what you were saying too, Pete, with they're not replicating as much. I think they've finally realized that in some ways cloning is more, causes more problems than it actually solves. Especially if you've got a ginormous amount of clones just floating out in the universe.
Uh,
Yeah,
I saw it
though
on both sides.
Gandalf did try to convince Bill otherwise with the whole Kevin situation where,
That's
he got
true.
stabbed in the back, where he's like, "Hey,
Hmm.
the senior Bobs see it this way, but for us, it means it's new, right? Like
Hmm.
it's surprising. We're not all just um over analytical thinkers playing mage spellcasters. Like we finally have other people wanting to play, and you know, some tanks and some thieves and et cetera, et cetera.
I think there's another one who also tried to emphasize it or drive it home. It was with the we're all basically from the same stock, and reading medical journals doesn't make you a doctor, and watching Grey's Anatomy doesn't make you able to perform the action. So that was more on hopefully we get others.
Not just
I
being
can't
a
remember.
monoculture.
Yeah,
I think it
I
was
can't
earlier
remember our
on.
mega person.
Yeah.
Mega building individual.
Megatron?
Or
No,
mega structure. Oh. He died, but he replicated, but then he went back to being a Manny, but then he's the only one who is getting the headway with the Heavens River and the structures and
I'm lost. Bob, Bill, Will.
No.
Bill.
It's the other replicant.
Oh. The other replicants that we see, let's see, there's the Australian probe.
I don't know. Or the
All Mind?
We found Heaven's River and we didn't know what it was or where all the infrastructures was. The professor.
You're talking about the professor.
Yeah,
okay.
Okay.
He's a
Will goes and
replicant
talks to
now.
I follow you.
Yeah, because I was thinking like the replicants, like it was Bob and Bender for the most part in Heaven's River. Well, and Bridget, but
right. They originally started with the 4.
Yeah.
Q.
And then we later find out it was the Skippies that were masterminding and setting up Starfleet to be less
confirmed.
True.
I had a feeling though. I did not trust you. I'm like, this is too convenient.
Dennis did a good job because it's one of those things that we see with all the other Bobs about how one of them puts his hands through his hair and the other one has other nervous tics, and they all kind of develop their own. So it was not something completely out of the blue, but because original Bob was noticing it, it was a literary device to hint at more.
The foreshadowing was very well done. It wasn't too over the top. It left us some plausible deniability because he was a Skippy and just like socially awkward. But at the same time, when it all came together at the end, you're like, And for me, that's when the writing's good. I get frustrated when it gets to the point where I can start just writing it myself on the first pass. Like, okay, the foreshadowing here is too obvious. But then if there's like not enough, it's completely out of left field. And you're like, how did we get here? So I felt it was well done.
We haven't been doing a whole lot of sci-fi, and this was a nice recap. Like I thoroughly enjoy the Bobiverse, and it's definitely higher ranking in sci-fi space and just overall, but it's a nice change in pace because typical lit RPG fashion or fantasy fashion, it's, hey, we've completed an objective and now there's a new objective, or we successfully stopped this disaster, here's the next one, and it's more chronological. But where we're at in the Bobiverse, it's ever expanding, where I could sit on one of the meat space planets and watch them develop and bicker. I could watch Bob, reconnect with Bender and catch him up and do whatever. I could watch the gamers and their D&D life, and I could enjoy that. I could follow Howard and Bridget and them trying out all the different Mannies. I could watch like any one of their stories would be interesting, but as well as we have the ever expanding and everybody just going off in different directions. And
You
so many
you
directions.
you heard that too, Chaz. Like Peter just acknowledged that there are other good and interesting genres
Or
than lit
genres that
RPG.
pique
Like
my interest.
Yeah, I
I
thought
might
I
I might
caught
be
that. I wasn't sure if I was hearing things, but
I might be putting you on the spot to reiterate this point with Pete that we could do more than lit RPG. But yes,
well,
Bobiverse is amazing.
They have different flavors, like
yeah.
I enjoy chocolate cake, but I also found, Rocky Road or whatnot, or that's ice cream, but you can have chocolate cake ice cream.
Well,
Anyway.
I think I had mentioned to Pete, to Karl the other day. I recently read the first two novellas in the Murderbot series, Pete, and
Hmm.
Murderbot. It's a completely different story. Of course, it's got its own direction it goes, and
Or is
Mhm.
that
its
still
own world and
Dennis?
everything. No, it's not. It's
No,
Martha Wells.
Okay.
you've listened to at least the first one, but continue,
It
Chess.
it feels very Bobbish without being Bob. It's that same. It gives me that same kind of feel that Bob does, but it's just a completely different story and universe. But it feels like Bob in a lot of ways. It's got
Yeah.
that cheeky humor. It's got pop culture references. It's got a lot of that same mix up that we have with Bob, and it's pretty cool. So that might be one to put on the radar.
Yeah, work that into a coming stream.
Yeah, but yeah, this was interesting. I wasn't. I will say that the politicking at the beginning did get a little old.
Yeah,
for me. I like politics, but I can only handle so much before I'm like, oh, okay.
I'm curious Peter's take on this, because usually those are the ones that he's like, come on, where's my action?
Right.
I don't want to hear about these politics.
Yes, but the way Dennis does it, it's different. It's not like we're sieging your castle and we've got to have diplomatic discussions on our horse, and and like that's all we can do. He does
I thought
well
we had a
with
couple scenes
kind
like that with
of
the gamers. No?
a he bounces around enough where, due to time and space and multiple iterations of Bob, we can be in the middle of a Quinlan adventure, swimming and running away, but then we can follow Bill with the gamers and have that interaction, and then we can talk to Bill again about some of the Starfleet stuff going on, and then we can talk theory with Bridget, and it did well with the literary devices for, okay, Starfleet's a problem. Yeah, this is kind of boring. We all know from previous iterations of Bob how it should go, but then we had the aha or surprise of they're actually, messing with equipment integrity, and Meat Space is acting pretty, typical or what we expected from them, now that they're not reliant on us or the replicants to survive. So yeah, there was enough ADDing or all over the place that it was tolerable.
That's cool. Yeah. And yeah, I agree with you there. There was a lot of variety in terms of the different threads that we followed. I really enjoyed once we finally kind of got through the politicking to the cyber attack, because that was pretty cool. I was like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. I mean, I knew Starfleet was going to be a problem, but
Right.
I didn't quite see it going there. So yeah.
And or go ahead and finish this thought.
No, go ahead.
or I was gonna go off on completely separate tangent. So
Oh yeah, go for it.
initially, I thought the cyber attack was gonna come from our our sailor bot, or not bot, our sailor replicant that
The
we saved.
Australian?
Yeah, the Australian probe. I thought it was going to come from there because the fact that Bob was initially stolen from the Australians. The Australians were the people on Sol who were messing stuff up and physically attacking people.
Oh, I could
The
see that.
Amy
Yeah, good
Guppy,
point.
stuff. Like, I thought we were going to introduce him and he was going to, rehabilitate, so to speak, and then have similar Guppy Prime directives, because I remember original Bob went and
That's
stripped out
right.
all of those because he shut off his antenna and stopped receiving signals and did, like, not firmware but root, coding terms for original file directories, where that guy didn't. Or I figured it was on, I think it's the first place we colonized, which had the dinosaurs. Um, had a Star Trek name, Vulcan. Yeah,
Oh,
I thought it was going to be
yeah.
on Vulcan because we
Yeah, right.
had the,
Faith
or
causing
no,
problems
no,
again.
we had the Amy controlled Guppy unit that they essentially were giving it orders, and it was autonomously doing things.
Mm.
I
And I
remember you
thought that was going
talking
to
about
develop
that.
into more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that didn't come about and become something.
I remember you talking about being disappointed that we didn't get to see that evolution path there.
Yeah.
Though now the
Well,
Skippies kind of
because
have their own actual true AI
they have
coming
their
into
own,
play.
but in talking about things that could go wrong and the fact of, like, things escalating and developing, and our current
Hmm.
thing that we have to do with the AIs that we know from Anarech, I believe the Quinlan AI is,
Hmm.
you essentially have to train it. We've kind of keep, like, he keeps hinting that Guppy is having more of a personality and that he wants to do the black box test. But the fact that we gave Guppy and Amy, I'm just hoping more would have came of that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the good news is, from what I've seen on, I can't remember if it was Twitter or Reddit, Dennis plans to keep making more. He implied at least several more books.
Yeah, last I saw, I think he said at least 7, right? Like a total of 7 in the series, and then maybe more. Yeah.
I hope so,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm having a lot of fun. I haven't gotten around to trying out his other series just yet.
Or we did
Um,
the Singularity Trap of his,
right, which was a standalone, but he
yeah,
has
but
another
our
complete series, I
Outland,
believe.
Outworld, or something.
I think it's Outcast, maybe. I'd have to look it up. But yeah.
I enjoyed that one novella of his, Change of Plans.
Yeah,
That
that
was,
had some Bobiverse type thing, but
it did. Yeah.
yeah, I appreciated it because for me, when it comes to sci-fi, it has to be believable, right? Like, it has to be
Yeah.
rooted in science, and he just does such a great job including all these major scientific themes and concepts in there that, like, we talk about just all the little life lessons you get from just reading, but you also
Yeah.
get to actually learn about these actual scientific concepts, as hanging out with Bob and Admiral Akbar and like all these other fun guys.
Right. Speaking of believability, I was curious to get your guys' take on the AI, on the true
Mm,
AI that they discovered, essentially created by the original Quinlans, I think it was, who eventually ended
yeah.
up trying to
but
kill off each other, and
he was number
Eh,
23, right? So like that
Yeah.
implies
it
that there
was
were at
several
least
iterations.
22, if not 23 prior, if it starts at 0 or 1 index.
Right.
I think it fits with every other fear that I've heard of potential AIs, which, for example, is called the paperclip theory, where if you essentially train it and you build it to make paper clips, everything looks like a paperclip. Or in Elon Musk's case, he says it would not have to be malicious intent from an AI to wipe out humanity. Humanity just has to be in the way of its objectives. And so, based off of similar logic with how we ended up with the Quinlins, the logic was not to let them go extinct, not to let them
Right.
kill themselves out. And where they were essentially destroying themselves, and technology was the catalyst or the big problem factor. So, in a backwards kind of way, in protecting you, they had to more or less de-evolve them. So I think
And we find
it
out that was
fits
intentional
into
too.
the problem theories, and that's where with the Skippies, they were trying to answer that question. Or the if you give it coordinates and it ends up in the wrong spot, it won't correct it if it's supposed to be on a flat versus on a spherical thing. It doesn't have
Mm-hmm.
that counter logic. And
Mm-hmm.
sorry, in continuation, oh man, we better not have a Buttersworth episode on our hand, because we went back for it's not Mother Teresa, or yeah, Teresa. We went back for our Quinlan Teresa that we were talking with as Bob was being a deckhand, and I'm excited to see her
That got me
become
pretty
a
excited too.
replicant.
Mhm.
So I think she would be great in continuing the develop of our current Quinlan AI, as well as I'm sad we
Well,
didn't get the Pav, but you know,
also
Mhm.
just being a voice of reason for them, right? Because that was one of the big fears. Part of the reason why the Quinlan AI was okay with no longer kind of like restricting them and sanctioning them, et cetera, is the fact that by sending them out into the universe, they're more likely to survive, but
yeah,
Mhm.
they're also more aggressive and belligerent than humanity is. And we saw what happened with humanity. And I'd really like to go down a separate side tangent on just the whole species concepts and where they're at. But yeah, so she will be a good kind of I guess guiding figure for the Quinlan if she does get into the replicant VR space, that the Quinlan, as they go and populate the different planets, can kind of relate to.
Mhm.
But the Bobs are kind of concerned about how that's going to turn out, because we have humanity who's now completely blocked out the Bobs. They're kind of doing their own thing, getting back to where they can start causing problems again with technology. And then we have the Pav that pretty much tell the Bobs to, get lost and don't want to join humanity's kind of united, it's not really nations, but,
or yeah,
worlds,
I
if you
forget
will.
the inclusive term they came up with.
Yeah. And then we have the Quinlan, who are the most aggressive of everything. And we have
But
the
kind of have to
Bobs.
relearn.
Yeah. And then we have the Bobs, who a good chunk of them don't want to have anything to do with them. They just want to
Mhm.
go take off and do their own thing, though they've taken a small colony to try to get
Or the
away from everything.
Outlanders, or
Mm,
Outworlders. Maybe that's where I was thinking of it, where
mm,
they essentially just want to, or one of them was gonna just shoot off and have a bunch of Amy Scuts or whatever, and then the other one
Right.
was actually gonna
yeah.
Yeah.
bury humanity and try and spread out. But then we have the Starfleet, who wants to deal with nobody and wants to stop everybody from dealing with everybody. And yeah.
I'm very curious what's going to happen now that the Bobiverse actually has the blueprint for the AI, and
yeah,
especially because what that could potentially mean, depending on what level of sentience that AI comes to, is what if all of a sudden the AI decides that we need to start eliminating the Bobs for the betterment of the universe.
It could very well happen. And along that theory, so the whole idea is like currently their Jahiva or whatever project has essentially unlimited computing power, but it's also dealing with things on a smaller scale, or Hugh explains it. But what if it comes to the point of it needs to start harvesting more resources and gathering more materials, and humanity's in the way? That way it can, get more processing power to figure out more stuff. And I could see that being a direction it goes or follows.
Yeah, that definitely could start to become a problem for sure. Yeah.
But that's where I'm hoping between Anik, the new AI we're developing, the Skippy oversight, and a couple other elements being able to. I'm currently expecting all of these things are interesting. I would love to dive into any of them, but a Mario situation where initially when Mario left and he was going out for, he wanted to get out of the boonies and go out to the country, I was like, he's dead. But he came back and he was like, oh, hey, I'm going to save everybody. I found the others. So, okay, he didn't die. But yeah, everybody's going to go out and there's going to be another, big baddie that might unite some of us. I don't know.
Or we just have this massive war between all the species.
Yeah, that's a distinct possibility too.
I expected that from the get-go with Vulcan and Romulus, where we had one enclave and the other enclave, and it's like you guys literally had one planet. We're fighting. Now that you have two planets and don't have to communicate, you can kind of subtly build up your forces and then go at it. But then we started continuing to jump, and yeah. Currently, the only one I have hope for is Poseidon, where they pretty much were like ruled by an iron fist, and then they ended up with a bunch of laid back people where it's like, no, we don't need to do that.
Very true. Karl, you mentioned you wanted to kind of take a tangent off onto some of the different species.
Yeah. I was kind of curious on your guys' takes and thoughts on it. One of the trying to think of the right terminology. Well, there's that, but the question has always been, as we go and we discover all these stars, why we haven't seen more species, the whole singularity where eventually they wipe themselves out, kind of like we've seen with the humans and the Quinlan. But something I was kind of reminiscing about and would be curious your thoughts are, evolution is always like survival of the fittest, where those that are strong and able to out reproduce, and pretty much the arms race where get stronger, and the conflict, how that turns around, and for at least humanity and the Quinlans kind of led to their own issues.
Demise.
Yeah, and here we are, we're seeing just all these different species where it's like, is conflict inevitable? Just
I would
Yeah.
say yes, in a way, because typically resorts are finite. Like if you go from just like the scaling between you have Earth and everybody has their little plot on the Earth and they're all fighting over the meager resources, and then
mhm,
we almost destroy ourselves. We get out into multiple planets and they're still fighting over political whatever. And we've got the Bobs that are, essentially going from system to system. My theory
mhm,
is the next intelligence or the thing above that, essentially, they see each of those little universes that the Bobs are going in between as something even smaller. So it's just ever expanding to where, like, for them, if there are already people here or because of whatever, they just pop over to the next system or they just continue on. I assume it
Hmm.
has something to do with just being able to travel faster or, oh, kind of like the mega ping the others would do, but on a grander
mm,
scale with less interference or the variability between the how Quinlan's were using like radio signals versus our Scud signals, and then
Hmm.
just take it up a level for they just, Google map it, except for
Hmm.
on a bigger scale.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. That's a definite possibility, Pete. Yeah, just the difference in technology and how fast they can get from one place to another definitely is a possibility. I also wondered too with the whole survival of the fittest thing. Like, we see what did we say? This was the 23rd iteration of the Quinlan species.
Or
oh, with
yeah, it
the
was,
AI.
and I think it was Anik
Or
23.
and that's right, and at 23.
Mhm,
But we know that at some point, there was so much infighting amongst the Quinlans themselves and everything,
I
but they
think
were
the
able to serve.
relation was humanity essentially in the 20th century almost destroyed itself, and then the
Hmm.
Quinlans, about the same age of their planet, almost destroyed themselves. And the difference was we fired off the von Neumann probe, and they created Heaven's River and the AI.
Right.
But yeah, it was a similar timeline.
And so I was thinking maybe some of these other species, wherever they were on different planets in the solar systems and different galaxies, who knows? Maybe they did completely annihilate themselves and didn't have any seeds to start another community or another planet or whatever.
right.
Yeah,
Because
yeah, that's the other extreme.
there that you're right, Carl. It seems like we've mainly got the Quinlans and we've got the Pavs and we've got the Vulcans and there were a couple of others
Or
in
the
there, but
others.
it's not nearly
Mhm,
as many as you would expect there to be, though,
mhm,
Yeah.
in such a large universe.
And
right.
that's where I think it was more iterated in some of the other books where like initially we were just looking for habitable planets that fit in the Goldilocks zone,
Right.
and there was way more of
Goldilocks
those
zone.
than we
I like
initially
that.
thought. But in the same scale, there were way fewer technologically advanced civilizations in the Goldilocks zone.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true too.
Which could be the idea of the ice age where, dinosaurs, maybe they built the pyramids, just saying, and then meteor strike, because we still can't. No, but yeah, there's, yeah, it could be something as crazy as aliens or dinosaurs, or it could be something as simple as Heaven's River, where just the long vision and the dedication and or slaves to make it happen, just brute force and manpower. But yeah,
Yeah.
That would have been interesting to see the dinosaurs build the pyramids with their little arms and
I was thinking more telekinesis, or
Well,
there's a theory
yeah.
that T-Rexes are actually dragons. So
I could see that.
the wing bones are hollow or make them lighter, and they
Oh,
disintegrate and they don't fossilize. So the little arms are more for something else.
Interesting.
that's one
Wow.
thing that the Bobiverse really helped me appreciate as they're going and landing on these different planets and all the different predators and everything they have to worry about. Like, thank goodness we don't have to worry about flying T-Rexes, on our daily walks or whatever.
So true.
Um,
Or back
yeah.
to the other like higher levels of species or intelligence. There's the comment, well, when you're running and you hit a mosquito, how much damage do you take?
Oh
Kind of
yeah,
like
yeah,
we might end up being the mosquito as far as like size and scale.
yeah. Things to think about. Things to
Mhm.
think about. Um,
There's always something bigger.
yeah. Well, we want to be respectful of your time, Chaz, on the stream. I know you said you had a hard stop at a certain point, but
6:30 is my
okay.
hard stop. So yeah, we've got some time to explore a little bit if you want to, or if you're getting close to time,
Absolutely.
I'm good with ending whatever's good for you too. So
I'm good on time for a bit. I was kind of curious on, I feel like there's so much more we could talk about of the actual book itself, but just with the way things have scaled so far, um and where we kind of end things, what your guys' thoughts are for like the future books and the directions he could go, because we started off with just, Bob and his first couple of generations, book one, and humanity and the Deltons, which we don't really see anymore, to now we have the Quinlan, the Pav, um, Deltons, which, they're still in Stone Age, and then all these different Bob factions going out in different directions of the universe, and Starfleet kind of its own little corner, um, and the Bobverse pretty much being shunned from most of humanity. Um, yeah, like,
It's an all out old school Western shoot 'em up right now, like between humanity accepting becoming replicants and manning manese,
I see
them
what you did
going
there.
out. um I forget who's doing the dolphin Poseidon thing, where
Mm-hmm.
uplifting through natural means and essentially training and curating more intelligent dolphins. So I could see that being a cool future endeavor. I could see us
Mm-hmm.
running into other alien species. I could see Anik, the AI from the Quinlan, going to the Pav, capsuling some and shooting them off in a bunch of different direction. I could see, oh yeah, humanity losing it all over again and destroying more of themselves and us saving more of them. But I guess we did that with shooting them out into different directions.
Well, they were talking about that with the Pav. The Pav pretty much just wanted to be left alone, and yet there was a couple of human worlds that were talking about shooting them down if they kind of came
The
within their airspace.
The big difference I got out of that was they're more patient and can see the long haul,
Because
plus
they're
the
bootstrapping up.
difference in the communal aspect where they
Mm-hmm.
operate. I think it was like 8 people to a household, where
Mm-hmm.
they had, just everything going on, but the way their societal structure is, and the fact that Bob gave a nod to him about them bootstrapping and them doing a lot of printers and doing a lot of that. I think they did give the concession of they will return to the home planet. So I could very easily see them bootstrapping and then exploding in a bunch of different directions, kind of trying to Red Rover it or whatever that kids game where you try to break through the barricade, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see a lot of that too, Pete. I think you're right on there. I think also too. I think we're going to see some either direct or indirect confrontations between Anik and the Bobs specifically, because
If it conflicts with his mandate, you mean?
yeah, exactly, because I got the feeling that his mandate is almost more like the Prime Directive than it is something that would jive with the Bobs.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I could almost see Anik teaming up. Well, I don't know if teaming up, but finding common cause with Starfleet.
Okay. Okay.
I
That would
I
be
could see
interesting.
that to a degree because I'm trying to remember what all concessions um, Hugh gave to Anik. It was something like faster travel, um, the stasis pods to keep them so that they can go to the different locations. And I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking more along the lines of the current version of Anik would have to kind of like redefine what its parameters were and or would replicate, so to speak, to travel with
Oh,
as we
yeah.
send them off in a different direction. Because and then from that you get two different divergence between how they're currently evolving. But yeah, I guess I could definitely see them being in conflict with other entities around them, primarily the Bobs, for how they're interacting with different species. Kind of like that whole, I guess we didn't wipe them out, but the, Griffin incident where Bob threw a rock a little too hard and essentially vaporized all the Griffins.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Forgot to
Yeah.
carry the one.
It's going to be an interesting space to watch because like if there is a conflict with the AI, for instance, like Hugh and the Skippies are much more invested in the AI than like the older Bobs are.
Mm-hmm.
And so that could bring a lot of conflict in there. If I could see the Bobiverse just going into complete chaos.
I could too, especially with just the conflicts of interest, right? Like they used to be so singular, and now they all have their different agendas. Like they've never really wanted to be humanity's quote guardians of the galaxy, and I really enjoyed that pun there at the end.
Yeah, that was
Um,
good. I like that too.
right. But with replicant drift, you could get to the point where kind of like we've worried about with the AIs wanting to end humanity. The Bobs could turn into another was it Madeiras or whatnot, just trying to eliminate all of humanity.
Right.
Um,
Did we? I think we went over it before, but did we find all the initial probes that were shot out? Because I knew there were the Russians, but then they ended up having multiple because Howard ran into them again when he was going back to Seoul. But then we thought we got all the Madeiras, but then it didn't add up for select things, and the whole comment about he's going to show up every episode to twirl his mustache and have his evil villain monologue, which we didn't have. But then the Chinese
it's
probe
left the
ran
door
straight
open.
into, or
The
I can't
others,
remember
right?
counting if how many were, well, of course, and people could have shot them out without other people knowing, but yeah. I could see that being another interesting twist of
Yeah.
running into another instance of humanity because we expanded one direction more or less from
Mhm.
my understanding, and if that one went in the opposite or differing direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or wait, don't we have a Bob? Isn't that part of the like outreach thing where if like all the solar systems are on a plane, he wanted to go up above it and kind of get like a bird's eye view?
I'm trying to remember. I feel like the Bobs
Yeah.
collectively have done a lot, and gone in many different directions. There's been plenty of them,
Right.
who have just taken off in one direction or another.
Yeah, and their other interests.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, I feel like you're right on that though, Pete. It does seem like there was one of that kind of wanted to get more of a um kind of get that like overseeing like all knowing of everything that's going on. Yeah.
Or there are a lot of them, and I'm horrible with names, so no luck there.
Uh,
I don't
so
remember
say
all the
we
names
all.
either, so it's all
It's
good,
hard to
Pete.
track them with the Bobs.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because we got what 200 plus Bobs now.
I think it's even beyond that because
Uh,
we're 20 plus generations out.
Oh
So you
yeah, so
think
it's
but
got to
like
that
be
all
that's
varies.
yeah, that's
Where
just,
Starfleet has been breeding like rabbits, and then OG Bob
we
is
we could
reluctant
be potentially
to,
in the tens of thousands then,
and then Skippies
theoretically.
are doing
yeah,
their
that's true.
uh, parent son complicated, replicant transport
Tests or whatnot.
theories, and then
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
And then it'll throw a whole nother dynamic into it if original Bob does eventually decide to do another replication.
yeah.
Uh,
Well,
yeah,
and I think we talked about that on our live stream prior when we did it, but there's a comment in, I think, book 3 where at the very beginning of the quantum effects or the replication drift, where maybe I should create a new one from a previous restore or from the file that I made you from, and then bring you up. And I think
Mhm.
that has a lot of merit because kind of like how Riker is burnt out with humanity and has had a lot of bad experiences, instead of that continuing to compound with all the iterations of humanity we have making Starfleet, it could, hey, now that we're not in the oh beepity beep, we need to save humanity moment, how would I have reacted differently if I was of that mind in this time?
Mhm.
So
right.
instead of compounding, just I interesting possible divergence.
So much potential. Um,
Yeah, there's a lot that can happen from here, and that's why I'm like, even though this wasn't my favorite of the 4 books, yeah, it still doesn't deter me. I still want to read more and see what happens. I'm pretty excited.
I felt like, in a lot of ways, this one was a setup for the next couple books, right? Because we're
Right.
seeing the different factions with the Bobs. We're seeing just kind of like what all is going on there. Um, that that's a part of like why we had so much quote unquote maybe filler. Like it wasn't necessarily filler, but it maybe felt a little bit like filler.
Like
Um,
the title
Yeah.
sequence before the actual episode, or like the beginning of a
yeah,
new arc.
yeah, like it was setting us up to see what all was happening, right?
I
Um,
I felt yes, but the majority of it was perspective shift and reasoning behind it. Like, yeah, all this stuff is happening in Bob's space and the meat space, but we need to save Bender. So that was the primary focus.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. And that was really cool. I was glad to see Bender again. And go ahead.
Or I think that actually is exactly what I was just talking about, how instead of making you from a clone of me now, make you from a clone of a previous iteration. That's pretty much what happened, where he's just been slowed down in his time sense greatly. And so all the technology is going to be new and all the situations are going to be new. And it kind of goes back to that whole, like, watching Grey's Anatomy doesn't make you a doctor. So he's going to be able to see it from a separate perspective. But yeah, sorry, going forward for possible things I'm excited about. I'm excited about Skippy's AI development with Anik. I'm excited about Teresa joining the Bobiverse and becoming a replicant and possibly replicating. I hope that our professor ends up replicating,
and
that
would be cool.
He creates his own cohorts of making mega structures.
Yeah. Well, they've talked
I
about
like that
idea. We did see that that's on the horizon at the end of this book for humanity, right?
Yeah. And then I want to see the Quinlans becoming back after the Stone Age incident. I want to see the dolphins uplifting, I think, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, when they're about to be ran over, and the dolphins are like, "Oh, see you later."
Marcus is the one that's hanging out with the dolphins.
Yeah, so like, and then I also just want to spend some time with Howard and Bridget and all their different Manny clones. I want to see different iterations of, the ants, where the ants can now shapeshift.
Yeah.
And then I want to see
some Iron Man suits going on.
I was thinking more like Green Lantern meets Silver Surfer, but Iron Man makes sense too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of like spaces I want to play in for continuation.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it sounds like he's got a lot of books left to explore a lot of the stuff, and who knows? We may be right on with our theory crafting. He may have plans for all of this. So
yeah, it'll be fun to go back and rewatch this when he drops the next book. See how spot on we were.
It would be cool. I don't know about you guys, but it would be cool if we were able to like get Dennis to come on and like do a stream with us.
Heck yeah.
There are a couple authors that we've connected with, but you know what? I think Dennis, back when we were doing either 2 or 3, actually caught us on one of the Reddits, and he plugged them, and I don't think he jumped in because time and space, but there's some potential.
Too busy snowboarding.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we live in an amazing time, and that's one of the things, we've talked about it with you before, Chaz, about just this little corner of the internet, just how awesome it is to connect with people, and to see, to actually be able to not only connect with other fellow book fans, but interact with the actual authors themselves.
Oh yeah,
is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we live in interesting times. I forget who the may you live in interesting times.
There we go. We certainly do.
Yeah.
We certainly do.
Well, I guess we'll go ahead. Did you guys have any final thoughts you wanted to add on Heaven's River?
I guess it's kind of what we already said. Amazing edition. Definitely has a different vibe or feel, and just can't wait for more. So thank you in advance, Dennis.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely
Yeah.
very excited about that. That would be my thought too. You have anything else, Carl, on that?
No, well said, Pete. Definitely enjoy him as an author, and the novella that you referenced earlier. It's a good reminder for me that I want to circle back to some of his other books when we get a chance and listen to them. So,
Awesome.
yeah, and we appreciate you having us on, Chaz. This has been a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, it has been a lot of fun. I wouldn't miss it. I love having you guys on the channel. And what have you guys got coming up?
Oh, this is my bad for. I don't think I have it queued. Do I? Nope, not that one. Aha! So coming up, it is the second book in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. It is Carl's Doomsday Scenario by Matt Dinneman. For those who don't know the series, it is essentially Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy smashed together with I always forget it. May the odds ever be in your favor. Hunger Games.
Oh, Hunger Games.
So essentially, it starts off, and we think we're alone in humanity, and then all of a sudden, aliens come and say, "Hey, you guys didn't fill out the proper paperwork to join or to claim your resources," and they take all of our resources and create a dungeon. Which is why I enjoy it so much, because it's kind of lit RPG-esque for abilities and scaling, but it's also televised where you get sponsors and you get other um, talk shows and other random things where they pop in and out of the dungeon. It's a little bit more on the adult side. The AI that controls the dungeon in the scenario kind of has a foot thing for enjoying people being destroyed by feet. And then we have a talking cat as our secondary main character. So it's
Oh,
very
Lasers out of her eyes.
I it's a good palate cleanser of not being too serious while adding philosophical wonderings of how alone are we in the world, on top of shooting lasers out of your eyes. So I thoroughly enjoy it.
And
he's wearing heart layered boxer shorts. I mean,
yes,
yeah, that's
yes.
How could you go wrong?
Yes, it's fashion sense, and
Right.
it's also one of Peter's favorite narration groups, Sound Booth
Okay.
Theater. They're just a
Nice.
lot of fun. They do like full music numbers and all sorts of sound effects. Like it's amazing performance. Whenever there's a
they're
sale on Audible, we'll actually search just for them, just to see what
I
else
need to
Jeff Hayes
get.
has going on.
They have their own service now as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Nice. Very cool. Well, yeah, make sure, and if you're watching the stream today, make sure to check out Karl and Pete, check out that stream. Their thumbnails are always on point.
We try.
So,
We appreciate your kind words, sir.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. So that's exciting. And Karl and Pete will be back with me in April. We are if you've been following my channel recently, you know I've started a new series called Chaz and Friends, where we just talk about anything and everything that we want to talk about, kind of a random talk about whatever stream, and Karl and Pete are joining me for that in April. So more to come on that. I'm excited to have them on again, and we'll just get to talk about whatever on that one, guys.
yeah, I'm excited to be coming back on here, but a million different directions for that one to go.
We need to get Chaz included on some of our geek outs. That way I can get Peter away from just purely lit RPGs.
We can, or no, we finished the Hyperion series, right? Or no?
No. I'm waiting for Chaz to get caught up on Dune. Though I know he's got a lot on his.
Right. I think I joined you for Fall of Hyperion, and that was it. So We talked about Fall of Hyperion, and I think that was
Well,
it. But
you also did the original Dune with us, the first
yeah,
one.
I did the original Dune with you. That's right. Yeah, I need to. I am planning to read more of the Dune books this year. So more
good.
I'll definitely look forward to joining you guys on that.
Yes, please.
And make sure stay tuned to the channel. I've got lots of fun stuff coming up. Next weekend, I am having Dr. Philip Chase on Chaz and Friends. So that should be a lot of fun. And
what's the date for that?
That will be the 26th. It's going to be at 11 a.m. Eastern time.
Nice.
Yep. I'm
so
drawing
Saturday.
A blank. Who's Dr. Chase?
Dr. Chase, he's been on BookTube a little over a year, and he just exploded. His channel just grew by leaps and bounds.
BookTuber, book aficionado. Okay. I was trying to think like a doctor sounds official, and I was trying to think if it was an author I knew. But
he does a lot of Malazan content.
That doesn't.
The Malazan Book of the Fallen. Yeah, he.
Okay.
Yeah, he does a lot of content around Malazan, and he also does
fantasy series. Pete.
He also does just a lot of fantasy in general, and he's working his way through the Dark Tower, so we've been talking about that.
And nice.
So,
Other stuff
gonna be a good
we need to
addition.
Yeah,
because Chaz, you always catch us back up on our sci-fi, and I don't need help with lit RPG, so getting someone more so into fantasy would round out our genres a bit.
Yeah, definitely. I'll look forward to throwing some stuff your way, and I'd love to hop back on the channel with you. And this has been a lot of fun. I'm glad we finally got to get back and finish out the Bobiverse, at least as far as it's currently gone, and get current. So thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. It's been a blast. I hope if you're watching this on the replay, feel free to comment below, and make sure you guys read more books. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.